By this point, we're all aware that Disney likes to sneak some fun adult references into their films.
Nice ascot.
But did you ever realize just how disturbing and potentially scarring some of their movies actually are? For this list, we're taking a deep dive into some of the most messed up Disney movies of all that likely had a serious emotional impact on people. Enjoy the video and let us know what you think, and before you leave, be sure to subscribe to CBR for more awesome content every single day. Here are 10 disturbing Disney movies we didn't realize scarred us for life. The Lion King. This is truly one of the greatest movies that Disney's ever made, with a compelling plot, interesting characters, and truly addicting songs. That being said, The Lion King also features one of the most heartbreaking and scarring movie moments of all time. When Mufasa is trampled to death in the stampede, we're crushed. But when Simba is trying to wake up his father while he lies dead in front of him, well, that's just one moment that changes you. This was likely a lot of kids' first experience seeing a major emotional death in a movie, and for those who were old enough to understand it, it definitely left some wounds. Luckily, the creators of The Lion King added in Hakuna Matata to distract audience members from the horrific tragedy they just witnessed. Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo is a fan favorite, and the movie was so loved that even over a decade later, fans were begging for a sequel. However, while this underwater adventure might seem like a heartwarming story for the whole family to enjoy, it's actually much darker than that. Once you stop and think, you realize that Finding Nemo is actually the terrifying story of a weak father fish who's unable to prevent his wife and unborn children from being brutally murdered in a vicious home invasion. Then the child who does survive, Nemo, is left with a disability from the attack and is then kidnapped and taken to a very hostile environment. If this exact story was told with humans instead of adorable animals,
here's Johnny,
we'd have to think there would be a lot of parents that wouldn't have let their kids watch. The Little Mermaid. Here's one movie whose messages have angered people for a long time now. In The Little Mermaid, Ariel basically makes a deal with the devil as she quite literally trades away her voice and agency for the chance of being with some dude. Voiceless and helpless, she instantly becomes a perfect match for Prince Eric. That's a pretty strange message to send to kids. And if that wasn't bad enough, Ariel has to literally change herself for love as she transforms from a mermaid into a human. This movie, while admittedly a lot of fun, sends some pretty backwards messages about gender roles and patriarchy, and we have to hope that young girls don't look up to Princess Ariel too much. Pinocchio. Look, Pinocchio is a super weird movie, but have you ever realized how actually messed up a lot of the stuff in the film really is?
here we go again.
For starters, the film is full of child abductions, and no one really seems to mind. These kidnapped children are then taken to a place called Pleasure Island, which is a creepy name for reasons we need not explain. Then on this island, the kids drink, smoke, and then are turned into donkeys for their supposed sins. Then after all of that weirdness, the donkey kids are then sold into slavery and forced to work in the salt mines for the rest of their days. Kids may not have totally picked up on the bizarre storyline here, but anyone who did was definitely left with feeling totally weirded out. Bambi. Arguably the most traumatizing moment in Disney's cinematic history is the death of Bambi's mother. Although it was created over 70 years ago, that devastating scene still packs a powerful, gut-wrenching punch as we learn that a deer hunter has killed Bambi's mother. Although the actual shooting happens off-screen, many generations of kids list that moment as scarring for their childhood. The moment that really pulls at your heartstrings, though, is when Bambi's yelling, "Mother, mother," and you have to just sit there knowing that she's already dead. This scene is right up there with Mufasa's death from The Lion King. It definitely makes you wonder why Disney likes making us cry so damn much. Pocahontas. This Disney classic may have taught kids to paint with the colors of the wind, but it also promoted some other pretty questionable messages. Pocahontas completely whitewashes the story of a 16-year-old girl who gets kidnapped by a group of conquerors and leaves out a lot of the slaughter and subjugation that took place. Then the movie goes on to suggest that the only way Pocahontas is able to escape imprisonment is by marrying one of the men who attacked her people. This definitely is not a good message to send to kids, and we have to think that impressionable youngsters in the audience left feeling very confused. Hopefully all of the fun songs and talking animals were able to distract kids from the truly scarring material. The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The Hunchback of Notre Dame isn't the most popular Disney movie of all time, but it does in fact tell a pretty great story. Perhaps one reason why the movie never became super famous is due to one particular scene that definitely scarred viewers. Quasimodo is undoubtedly an outsider in the film, and to get this point across, the movie presented a scene where the character was literally tied down and pelted with vegetables in the middle of the town. Watching this scene as a kid, you may not have thought much of it, but looking back now, it's so brutal that we have to question Disney's choice to include it in the film. Toy Story 3. There's no denying that Toy Story 3 is a masterpiece, and it definitely is one of the greatest animated movies ever made. The film's full of your favorite characters, a wild story, and some pretty great references too. Unfortunately, the ending of this movie is one of the most emotionally scarring third acts we've ever seen. If your entire childhood didn't flash before your eyes when the beloved team of toys was about to fall into the incinerator, you may not have a heart, or you're just too young to have this hit you in the feels. On top of that horrifying moment, the movie also closes up with a final scene that shows Andy giving away his toys and his youth, and anyone in the crowd who grew up watching Woody and the gang was definitely left with tears streaming down their face. Inside Out. Although it was billed as a kids movie, Inside Out is one of the most complex and mature films that Disney's ever made. Yes, the movie's a lot of fun, but it also deals with some pretty serious stuff, like the emotional well-being of kids going through a rough time. Such an honest depiction of a kid's struggle likely left a lot of parents in the audience with a case of the feels. On top of that, there was one moment that was truly emotionally scarring for everyone watching Inside Out, and that was when the imaginary friend Bing Bong sacrificed his life in the name of Riley's happiness. This moment, while beautiful, was truly heart-wrenching, especially for anyone in the audience who grew up with an imaginary friend. Beauty and the Beast. With the new live-action adaptation of Beauty and the Beast dominating the news, it's due time to take a closer look at the famous and really think about just how messed up and potentially scarring it is. First of all, Belle basically develops Stockholm Syndrome by falling in love with her captor, the Beast. On top of that, the Beast is verbally abusive to Belle for the entire film and also uses a lot of physical threats against her and her family.
You realize what you could have done?
But for some reason, Belle keeps on coming back to him. While Disney claims this sends a message of don't judge a book by its cover, we have to think that it also puts a weirdly positive spin on a very abusive relationship. And that wraps up our list for 10 disturbing Disney movies we didn't realize scarred us for life. Which one of these films left you feeling a little messed up? Which other Disney movies do you think scarred kids? Let us know all your thoughts in the comments section below, and be sure to subscribe to CBR for more fun videos like this one.